going on, everybody? It's Joel here with as many reviews as possible, and today we're doing the review of the Nike Metcon DSX FLYKNIT 2s. Alright everybody, so I'm going to assume it's safe to say that most of you guys have already watched my initial impressions about the DSX FLYKNIT 2s, and if you haven't, then I'll leave a link in the description so that you can check that out. In that video, I go over a lot of the formalities about the DSX FLYKNIT 2s, what I initially thought about these shoes after only using them for one workout. It had only been one day since I had purchased these shoes. So we're going to skip a lot of what I think about the way it looks and a lot of the formalities here and there, and we're just going to dive into the actual performance aspect about the DSX FLYKNIT 2s. Now, starting with this review, I'm going to implement a brand new scoring system. It's going to work from 1 to 6 based off of the build quality, the fit, the flexibility, the stability, and then the overall value of the shoe. The maximum score is going to be 30 points, and obviously the more points that you have, the better of a shoe. Now, there's definitely going to be some subjective bits about a shoe, and that's why I was so hesitant to implement something like this in the past, but we're going to try it out and see how it works. So starting with the build quality and construction, I'm going to give this shoe a perfect 6 out of 6. Like most Nike products, the build quality of the DSX FLYKNIT 2s is almost impeccable. There's really no loose glue anywhere to be found on these shoes. There's no loose seams anywhere. The FLYKNIT construction of the DSX FLYKNIT 2s is much better than it was implemented on the original DSX FLYKNITs. It's just got more structure throughout, and it feels a ton more secure in the midfoot of the shoe. The toe box of the shoe still remains very, very flexible, and the shoes are very breathable as well. There was a slight reduction to the TPU heel counter, but in my experience with this shoe, I didn't really notice any kind of loss of stability, and I actually thought it felt a little bit more stable compared to the previous model. Now, another thing that people were worried about was the elastic stretching out over time, and in all the shoes that I tried, the ankle collar kept its elasticity and did not stretch out in the month that I've been using these shoes. The outsole received no changes. It's the exact same one on the originals, and I think that's mainly a good thing because I thought the traction was very good in the original DSX FLYKNITs, and that goes for rope climbs as well. I did a few rope climbs in my test shoes, and they not only grip the rope very well, the upper of the DSX FLYKNIT 2s held up really well. There was just a few rub marks here and there, but that was only a few rope climbs, so the test of durability is still yet to be determined. Now, moving on to the fit of the shoe, where I gave the FLYKNIT 2s a 4 out of 6. And the reasoning for this score is, even though there's more structure throughout the upper, the length of the shoe is a little bit longer than it was on the original DSX FLYKNITs. Now, I sized these with a size 10, and then I thought they were a little long, so I went and I returned them at the Nike store, and that's why I now have the chili red colorway. I returned the original metamorphic ones for a size 9.5, and the length was better, but the width was much more narrow. And after walking around the mall for about an hour, I went back to the store and I exchanged them, and they didn't have any more metamorphics, so I had to get the chili reds. Now, another thing about the fit of this shoe is that I've heard extreme cases of heel slip, so much so that people have even told me that their feet completely fall out of the shoe, which I find hard to believe because I just have never had that happen to me. But I do recognize the fact that there is a little bit of heel slip in this shoe. I can make it happen if I really try to, but under any kind of normal workout circumstances, I haven't had my heel come out of the shoe. I'm gonna say fit right now is subjective, and if your heel slips in your normal Metcons or any Metcon before this shoe, it's probably gonna slip in this shoe as well. Now, moving on to the subject of why we even have a FLYKNIT version Metcon, and that's gonna be the flexibility and comfort, where I gave the FLYKNIT 2s a 5 out of 6. Now, compared to the original models, the DSX FLYKNIT 2s are probably about 25% more flexible throughout the whole shoe, and that's partly due to the new sock-like upper. Even though there's more structure in the ankle and the midfoot of the shoe, the upper feels more elastic and moves with your foot a lot better. The toe box is still very flexible on the Flyknit 2s. The other part of the equation is the fact that the drop-in midsole is made out of a completely new material that's a little bit more rubbery. Now, it doesn't compress as much under load, but flexes much better than the original one did. One of the things that I really disliked about the originals was that the midsole compressed so much that I felt like my feet were working overtime and trying to find the right position. And that overall made my feet hurt really badly. My feet are much more comfortable in the Flyknit 2s, though there are still some instances where my feet got pretty achy during a workout where I was doing just a ton of double unders. When it comes to running performance, the Flyknit 2s are going to be just okay. The platform is a little bit more stiff than the original ones were, but the structure holds your foot in place a lot better. The energy return on the new drop-in midsole is much better than the originals. I wouldn't recommend running a marathon in these shoes, but they should be suitable for any kind of short runs that you'll find in a Metcon all the way up until probably about a 5K. So the main reason why I was not a huge fan of the original DSX FLYKNITs was because of its drop-in midsole. It was dull, unresponsive, and just turned into mush when you put any kind of load that wasn't your body weight on top of it. So I'm happy to report that the DSX2 has a redesigned mixed material midsole that not only has better flexibility, has better forefoot flex grooves, is way more responsive, and much less incompressible, making the strong suit of the DSX FLYKNIT its stability. So I give this shoe a 5 out of 6. I was able to take the DSX2s up to pretty much all my 90% lifts. For my birthday workout, we did a max effort deadlift followed by a max effort back squat with a max effort squat clean at the end, with rounds of kettlebell and gymnastics work in between. For the deadlift, I hit 500 pounds, which is a little bit under my 1 rep max of 540. And then for my back squat, I hit 385, which normally my back squat 1 rep max is 405. And for the squat clean, I had hit 285 pounds earlier in the day, but later on after the workout, I hit 255. My 1 rep max squat clean is 300 pounds. So lifting in the DSX2s is like night and day compared to the originals. These are really solid lifting shoes, and I highly recommend them if you're just looking for a pair of shoes to do any kind of Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting in, because they're great for that. Now, they do have a 6mm drop, which I don't really care for, but still is relatively flat, though I do prefer the 4mm drop of the normal Metcon 3s. Now let's do some comparisons in performance against some of the other top training shoes on the market, starting with the Nike Metcon 3s, because the Nike Metcon 4s are not out yet. At the moment, these are probably the best deal in training shoes because you can get them as low as like $60, which is ridiculous for the amount of performance that you're getting from the Metcon 3s. They are still a very flexible, one of the most stable options for a training shoe that you could possibly get. What you're getting from the DSX2s is a slightly more flexible, slightly less stable training shoe that fits a little bit better than the normal Metcon 3s do. From a look standpoint, I do like the DSX2s, but you really can't beat the value proposition that the Metcon 3s bring to the table at the moment. So when it comes to choosing between either of these shoes, if you could only pick one, I'd say go for the cheaper Metcon 3. The Nano 8s are currently my favorite training shoe and are really stiff competition. They are more flexible, they're lighter weight, they're more stable, they fit better, and they cost less than the DSX2s. The only thing that I would score the DSX2s ahead of the Nano 8s in is the appearance of the shoe, where the DSX2 handily trounces the Nano 8 because they're just not all that great looking. But overall, the Nano 8s are a much better shoe than the DSX2s that cost less. If for some reason you're still looking at the normal DSX FLYKNITs, I'm gonna say stop what you're doing and just get the normal Nike Metcon 3s because the value and performance is much better than the original DSX FLYKNITs. Even though you can find these at a pretty deep discount nowadays, I would still not recommend them as a serious training shoe. They're just not that great. And if you really needed FLYKNIT, then spring the extra money for the FLYKNIT 2s because they're just way better. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is the value of the DSX FLYKNIT 2s, where I give this shoe a 3 out of 6. Now the reasoning for that is because this is one of the most expensive training shoes on the market, retailing for $150. So what are you getting for that premium in cost? Well, the DSX 2s are more flexible. They have a better lifting platform than the original DSX FLYKNITs, but they're not as good for lifting as the normal Nike Metcons, which are still very flexible in their own right and should handle pretty much any running that you're gonna find in a Metcon just fine. So when it comes down to it, all you're really gonna get from the DSX 2s over the standard Nike Metcon 3s is the appearance of the shoe and the fact that the insole doesn't squeak, which might be worth it for some of you guys out there. So that's not to say that I dislike the DSX 2s, because they're actually probably in my top 5 training shoes right now. I just don't really see the value in spending the extra on the DSX 2s over some of the other training shoes on the market, especially when you have something as good as the Nano 8s coming out and something as cheap and good as the Nike Metcon 3s. It just doesn't really seem worth it to spend $150 when you don't really need to. But if you want to, then the DSX FLYKNIT 2s are an excellent training shoe, and I highly recommend them if you don't mind spending the extra money. You can read the full review of the DSX FLYKNIT 2s on asmanyreviewsaspodsible.com. And once again, make sure that you guys follow me on Instagram so you can get all the latest and greatest updates. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you disliked it, hit that thumbs down. And as always guys, please subscribe, and thanks for watching.